Half an hour, yay!
One third of it's gone. Woo!
I actually typed a script this time.
Let's go. Woo!
Hello everyone! In the space that never dies, we'll be your travel guides. It's time for Internet with your host, Eli Munii. And just for Eli, I have included his name on Comic Sans, his favorite font.
No!
The world's worst font.
It's the best font, and you can fight me on it.
But anyways, let's begin with the topic. So, Eli, do you remember what today's topic is?
I don't know, Mooney. What is today's topic?
Our topic today is corporate VTubers, or at least Eli's crash course introduction into what a corporate VTuber is.
Boo, I'm learning outside of school. Awesome.
So, Eli, as someone who
Yes?
is not a huge fan or even a fan of corporate VTubing, what do you know about it?
Not to say I'm not a fan of it. Okay, so my idea of like corporate VTubing would be like, oh, you have your set schedule and basically like you have everything set out for you already. I mean, I guess you also have like input on things, but like for the most part, it's like you have a team that'll tell you like this day you gotta stream Destiny because it's at the top viewer point, and like basically you just have people telling you how you can stream and like who you can stream with. Is also one of those things where it's like since you're having people tell you what to stream or like when to stream it, you also get to have more people come by because of, since you're part of a corporate, then you'll have people be like, oh, they're part of Bugatti Bugainia. That's a really good company. Like, that's a really good company.
I'm
so
gonna have
I'll
so
watch
much
it.
fun watching you try to transcribe how to write that. You understand what a corporation is, though, right?
Yeah,
I hope you know what a corporation is. You're
I'm
saying
in business management. I
Yeah.
would hope that I know what a corporate is.
So, for anybody that don't know what a corporate VTuber is necessarily, a corporate VTuber is basically, I guess you can say they're sponsored streamers essentially, and identities. The difference between a streamer being part of like a streaming company versus a VTuber company is that for VTubers, their identity is owned by the company. Because like even if a streamer were to leave a company or a streaming group, they're still their own identity. You know what I mean? They may not
Yeah.
necessarily own their entire identity depending on their character, because, you know, that's the kind of same thing if you are an actor. But for VTubers, it's even more so, especially because you are a character.
Yeah, like usually, I mean, that's kind of what VTubing is. You just playing a character who could be either close to how you are in real life or a complete opposite, but you're still having an act.
Yeah.
From what I understand for like VTubing, a lot of them are like, oh, you have a lore, you like usually follow with that, and like I'm still coming up with mine, but
I mean, I
like
don't.
kind of the same.
That's not necessarily
Sort of.
true even for corporate streamers. It's kind of like a nice to have because it's a very popular kind of like character lore. It's not a necessary part of streaming, I feel.
Yeah.
Or
I mean,
being part of a company. It's just kind of like a fun little thing. 'Cause-
yeah, I would
yeah.
assume so. Just because like you don't have to
Yeah.
be a part of a company, you don't have to be a part of a group of streamers to get popular.
Yeah.
It's just one of
So-
those things that like being a part of a group will give you that growth, I
Yeah.
guess, sooner.
Yes and no.
Ish.
It depends on the company sometimes. Like basically a corporation is they own these VTuber identities. The streamers are basically hired contractors where they will act as those characters for the streams and for the company. And the company's job is essentially to manage and advertise and, well, at least most of the backroom stuff. Of course, there's some things that you're limited to, and there's some things that you have more opportunities to do. But think of it like that. If you're like an actor or a singer, just signing up with a label.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. So there's some
Yeah, I
things,
get it.
some things you didn't really necessarily get correct, but I understand where you're coming from, is them telling you, oh, you have to stream this, you have to stream that. They definitely do give recommendations on what you should stream. It's just depending on like what is popular at the time. They don't necessarily force you to do it. Or at least like the good companies, I would imagine, do not force you to stream what you don't want. A lot of corporate VTubers do stream what they want, but it's within reason, I would have to say. It's kind of like if when you're making music too, right? Or when you're acting, you can't go and do every single thing that you want to do necessarily. You try to work together with the company to choose from your best options.
I guess it does make sense because if you're streaming, you wouldn't want to, like, let's say, you wouldn't want me to be streaming like Stardew Valley because, like, not to say I hate the game, but it's like it's not really something for me. So since I would be disinterested in it,
yeah,
then
it'd be kind
it
of
won't
like
be...
tracking your like tracking a lot of your analytics, like what is popular, what would they recommend you stream instead. If you want to stream Stardew Valley, they can't really stop you. I mean, there's gonna be like an audience who will want to watch it. If the numbers aren't there, yeah, they'd probably be like, we strongly recommend you don't stream this.
Yeah, like I'm like if I was to stream Stardew Valley and the entire time I'm just like, ugh, fucking trees. Oh my god. Like you could just tell that I'm not into it, then like I'm pretty sure they'll be like, hey, play Dead Space, you know?
Maybe you want to consider streaming on something that's a little bit more mainstream.
Yeah.
Now you kind of got an idea what a corporate VTuber is. Do you know any of like the major companies? Like what corporations do you think you know?
The only one I know is Hololive.
Really?
Yeah.
In terms of like the most popular corporate VTubing companies, I think in the English sphere, there are 3. So Hololive is definitely one of the top companies, I would have to say. Another company you may not know is Nijisanji. They're both Japanese companies, and I will argue that VShojo is one of the top 3. And then there are a lot of like medium level of recognition, and then there's like the lower tier where like they barely have any recognition. It's more on the niche side of knowing them. I tend to watch corporate VTubers if they're doing like giant collabs with each other, because that way I get to know a bunch of different people.
Yeah.
It is hard to watch all the corporate VTubers. So anybody and everybody who like will watch multiple different streamers at the same time, no idea how you do it, but that's incredible that you're able to support so many people.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But would there be a reason to, after your contract's over, just to not reassign? Because I feel like if you're part of a company, like looking at it like financially or like as a business, if you're still booming with them, I feel like if you just randomly were just like, all right, well, I was good for 2 years, you guys helped me out. Like I feel like that says more about like it. I don't really know how to explain it, but it seems like they're not really.
It makes sense. So there are several benefits to joining a company versus being indie or joining a group. What the company typically provides you with, usually with a free model, if they're not adopting, quotation mark, adopting your previous identity, that is more dependent on how big the company is and how big you are as a personality. There is marketing. So they will do the advertisement for you and stuff like that. There is collaboration opportunities because they can trust you because the company represents you. You know what I mean? So they can trust you more with like deals and sponsorships and getting all these opportunities because you have a company backing you. You have access to all these famous artists and sound designers, merchandising and stuff like that. Like there is a lot of benefits to joining a company, but the caveat is that it's very hard to get into a company, obviously.
Yeah.
Especially for the big 3 that I mentioned, there are probably like thousands upon thousands and thousands of applicants every time they announce an audition. There are a lot of benefits to getting it, and everybody wants to get into the company. And for some people, joining a company can be life-changing, financially speaking, especially if you join one of the big 3. Because once you join one of the big 3, you are thrown in front of so many eyes and people. And that's one of the biggest benefits, is that once you are introduced to such a large audience, and if you're able to cultivate that audience, they will follow you outside of the company, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when you were asking earlier with why some people may not continue their contract, there are multiple reasons why they may not continue being with the company. Because being with the company, you're right, the negative aspects of joining a company is that you're restricted with certain things. They take part of your ad revenue or income because you're under their label. And yeah, once you're big enough, would you really need them anymore? And the answer is, for some talents, it's like the benefits that they don't have to do some of the work. They don't have to search for opportunities. They will just go to your management company for the opportunities to offer it to you. Some people just sit there going like, it's pretty nice and cushy here. I'm just gonna stay. Whereas like some people might be like, no, I'm big enough already that I can, and I'm willing to handle all this work by myself, so I'm gonna leave.
Okay, yeah.
There are other reasons why some talents might leave, even though they're the most popular in the company. Everything is very complicated at the heart of it. Because again, it's like leaving a cushy corporate job. But I have to say this again, especially for people who are interested in joining the corporate world. Even though you're joining a corporation, you will be considered a contractor or a freelancer. You will not be getting any health benefits from this. They will not pay for your dental or anything. You have to make sure that you are financially stable to take on this opportunity.
Yeah, I imagine that's still like you're being taxed a lot.
Do the biggest VTubers usually stay with their companies? Yes and no. So one of the biggest VTubers left her old company, but she left on good terms. And I'm going to tell you the differences between like leaving on good terms versus bad terms. She left her company mostly because due to she didn't like how management was handling all the harassment she was getting due to a issue involving politics.
Ooh.
Because this was asked. When you leave a company, do you get to keep your name and model? You do not. It's very rare, especially if you're part of like a really big company, that they'll allow you to take the name and the model. And there's reasons for this. For the larger companies, it's association. When you leave the company with their model, you'll still always have that association with them. It can be a matter of business. Like, do they really want you to profit off of the name that they technically helped you build? Some people wouldn't like that. And that's another reason why some channels close, why they private a lot of like of the videos. It's something that like a lot of talents will discuss with the talent agency, because even if the talent were to leave the channel, the question of what happens to the money afterwards comes into question. For some people, they might be like, hey, you can keep all the money, but you can't delete my videos or my VODs, right? For example. Or they might say, hey, I want you to delete all my VODs so there's no awkward feelings that you're still profiting off of my content. Because you have to remember, when you join a corporation, they own all your shit.
Yeah.
Like, so if you make music with, yeah, if you make music with that company, they own that music. That's something you have to be okay with before joining a company. It's become more popularized, I think, with more Western companies, or more westernized companies at least, to give them the option to buy out your name and your model. Some people do feel like a strong attachment to that name and model, but for some people, they probably want a fresh start sometimes, so they're more than willing to let go of that name and model. Unfortunately, there are ways to find your favorite entertainer. I'm not going to say how, but a lot of it is just listening very carefully to their voice sometimes. I definitely recommend watching talents talk about or trying to be as transparent as possible about the costs that go into being a VTuber, or what it takes to be part of a corporate VTuber, because it's very, very fascinating, which is why I am so interested in this world. I'm only really scratching the surface because I've never actually been behind the closed doors, right? Because there's so much that goes on. Even if you don't plan on joining a corporate VTuber company, it's just nice information to have.
Yeah, I can imagine. Because, like, at least, like, if you know what's a possibility, because I'm generally a guy that likes to have backup plans to everything, which is why I might drive myself crazy with trying to get 2 degrees on top of IRL stuff I'm not gonna fucking get into. Like, at least knowing what's a possibility and being like, oh, I can try to get into this company, and if they say yes, then shit, but they don't, then damn.
I will say, because of the whole revenue thing, even if you join one of the big 3, it's not a guarantee to be a full-time career.
Yeah.
A lot of the people who work in VTuber companies, the ones that earn enough to make it their full-time job, are either really smart with their money, are in the top percentage of the super chat earners, and that's pretty much it. You have to be either the top super chat earner. It's not enough to be the top subscribed member. It's just the top earner is the more important, because you can have a lot of subscribers, but if no one is like opening their wallets, then well, all you have is viewership. You get some ad revenue, but it's not enough at the end of the day.
And especially with it's kind of just crazy to think about, like, even if you get into like the big companies and you're like extremely popular, it's crazy to think that like even they can't earn enough money. But it's also so to take into account that like the companies themselves are taking a part of your money because you're part
Yeah.
of their company. Like
So
it's not just like, oh, come on in, we'll get you a lot of money. Like
the
there's a
interesting
lot that goes into it.
Yeah, the interesting part though is that there was a percentage floating around for quite some time. So I'll always say this, Twitch is technically the one that will start you off earning some sort of revenue the fastest compared to YouTube.
Yeah.
Because with Twitch, you only need to have an average of 3 viewers and 50 followers before you can slowly become eligible for some sort of revenue. And so that is a 50-50 split for anybody that is curious.
From what I understand, because I know ad revenue from like all the people that are complaining about it, it's like $3.50 for every 1,000 views of an ad. I think it's probably less actually.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I heard that number somewhere. That might have
Yeah.
been like a planned thing that might
Yeah.
have gone through, or it was like
Yeah.
they're iffy about it. It's something.
YouTube and Twitch partnership, however, is the split gets changed to 30/70. 30 going to the platform for hosting your content and also storing the content, also for their servers. And then 70% goes to the entertainer. So a lot of
Yeah.
these companies will go with YouTube because it's the easiest, I believe, to do the revenue split, than Twitch. The company will create the YouTube account, so then all the banking information will go to the company. From that 70%, there was a number that was floating around, and this may or may not be accurate between the different companies. The number that they threw out was 30% from that 70%. So it's not that the talents are getting like a 40%, it's from that 70%, meaning if that 70% is now 100%, it's 30% of that, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But they won't actually receive that money until, like, I think 2 months later from when they initially got that money. These are just the amounts that one talent has said in the past. I'm not exactly sure. Different companies will have different rates. It's just, these are things you can expect when joining a company. Now, it
Yeah.
could be significantly less when you're joining like a newer company. It could be significantly higher when you join a bigger company, because they're going to be like, hey, you have no platform, kid. So we're gonna take 50% of that revenue that you get from YouTube until you can prove to us why we should give you a bigger cut. You know, it could be that. And for the newer companies, should be like, hey, we're just starting out, we're gonna try this out, but we want to keep you, so we're gonna give you like a little bit more of a percentage as an incentive to continue working with us. But maybe that's a reason why a lot of VTuber companies fail, because they don't know how to do the perfect ratio.
They're not like they like give you too. They let you keep too much, and then
or maybe they keep too little in the politics between the talents and the management, and a lot of it does come down to like, if you don't know how to manage your money with a business, it's gonna fail.
that's why in business management they make you do 2 finance classes. Ooh.
You know, remember when well, you couldn't see the quotation marks when I said like adopting people's like models. So
Yeah.
that is a way to cut down on costs technically, because if you are adopting someone's model and their rigging style, technically, I'm pretty sure most VTuber companies will buy you out for your model because they want to own your image.
So in that case, if you had to leave, would you be able to would you have to pay for your model back?
Yeah.
Like have to basically just refund them the money?
Okay, so think of it like this way, Eli. You're joining my company. And I really like your model. I really like your rigging. So, you know what, kid? I'm going to offer you this much money to join my company. And I'm going to invest this much money in order to buy your model and your image. Because now I can use your image to commercialize. I can use it on merchandise and blah, 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 blah. And you're going to be like, oh, that sounds like a sweet deal. I have a small following. Like, why not, right? It doesn't hurt. Let's say that your identity and your image blows up 10 times or 100 times, we'll just say, right?
Yeah.
And then you turn to me and go like, hey boss, I feel that it is time for me to leave. And I'm going like, cool. And then you're saying, okay, I want to leave with my image and like my character. I'm going to be like, okay, well, this is how much I invested in your image. And because you want to continue profiting off of your image that I have invested into, you have to pay me 100 times the cost that I initially invested with.
100 times.
I said maybe. It's not always that case, right?
I know, like I'm not saying like that's not like the always a number, but I just imagine it's like,
It's
all
a
right,
percentage.
kid,
It's definitely a big percentage afterwards, especially if you grew up a lot through the company. Because they can argue,
yeah,
through my company, it's not through necessarily all your work, but through my company, I made you who you are today, right?
yeah. I just imagine it's like, all right, kid, it's gonna be like 10,000 for like all your stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and then afterwards, like you're just like, all right, I'm gonna branch out, do my own thing. It's like, okay, $1 million right now. It's like, well,
Again, I don't know what the contract looks like at the end of the day.
yeah,
Everyone's going to
but
have a different contract because there might be like a stipulation going like, hey, I still own the rights to my image and to my character, but if I decide to leave the company, that I will repay the money that you used to pay me to initially sign me onto the company, right? That you could add that into the contract. It all depends on the company. Some companies are really nice, some companies aren't. What I speculate some of it would be is like, hey, pay me this much for the art and for the advertisement and the rigging and the work cool, which some people can afford, and then there's some people who can't afford that because it's just way too much money.
I can't even fathom the amount like it would be to just like as a broke college student. If someone asked me like, "Oh, you want the rights to your character back?" Oh,
That's fine.
$10,000.
You have to remember though,
Like,
also, when you're signing these contracts, usually they're requesting at least a year of your time streaming, because I think
yeah,
the theory that I'm thinking of is that they're asking for a year in your contract because it's to pay off your model. Theoretically, within a year, you should be able to pay off your model. But
yeah.
nowadays, I've seen it with two different companies. They're asking people to sign for 3 years. I don't know how much penalty people have to pay when they break their contract by either leaving early or leaving on bad terms. But usually there's a penalty to it, I believe. Because this will go back into like, well, Eli, what do you think is in a VTuber contract? Out of curiosity,
And if it
what kind of rules would you think are in a VTuber contract?
basically like what you can or can't say, topics that they want you to stay away from,
Mm-hmm.
like politics
Mm-hmm.
specifically. If the certain attitude that they want you to genuinely have
Mm-hmm.
towards like certain, like if someone brings up that topic, like how would you respond?
Yeah.
Like they would like give you an idea, like usually like, oh, we don't talk about like that, or like, oh, like that's cool anyways, and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Also, it could probably be for your safety as like a streamer and the safety of the company,
Mm-hmm.
not to give too many details about anything in life,
Yeah.
really. That's
Yeah,
like the
that's the
first
kind of
things that come to
basics.
mind.
Okay. And what do you think is typically like an NDA? Like just in general.
Generally, probably like stuff you can't comment on,
Yeah.
like period. Like how you when you and me were planning about the podcast, if it
Yeah.
was with a company, they would be like, you can't even say like, oh, I have a project coming up. Like that would be against anything, because then people would be like, oh, what's the project, whatever. Probably another thing that comes to mind is like any inner workings of the, like how you were saying, how since we don't know how the inner working is, we don't know how pay would work.
Mm-hmm.
uh Companies will probably not want to talk about pay,
Yeah.
even if we were a part of a company.
Mm.
Anything to do with the contract that we signed,
Yeah.
on top of the names of anyone in the company that gave us the opportunity,
Yep.
those were what I assume would be
Okay.
on like an NDA or something like
So
that.
I'll generally say what is typically on NDA, especially for media. It's usually pretty much or less the same. Like for anybody that's confused, NDA stands for non-disclosure agreement. Basically, you are right on the money about certain topics. Like you can't say who you are or identify people or staff in the company.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm pretty sure if you're working for the company, you can say that you're working for said company. You cannot specifically, like when you're talking to authorities, of course you're going to have to say what you do. Like that, like you can't.
I mean,
You
yeah,
can't.
but
Like there's circumstances like you can't. But you can't just go on Twitter and be like, "Hello world, I am so and so from this company." But like if you're going to
that's
like,
what I mean.
yeah,
Like if you're under certain circumstances, yeah, they like if you got arrested and it's like, but like if you got detained for whatever,
yeah,
like you're speeding,
yeah.
and like they need to know
Yet that if
what
they
you
have
do
to
for a living
yeah, identify
and
you
who
and
you
stuff like
work
that. Yeah, yeah,
for.
yeah.
Yeah, then like obviously in that situation, then you would have to.
Yeah.
But I mean like as more of a public thing, because usually
Yes.
with
Privately, you can
police,
talk about it. Like, you can probably talk about it with
yeah,
your family and some of your friends. Be like, if they guess, if you're okay with family, they pretty much, if you, especially if you live with them or your roommate, they're pretty much gonna figure it out. So you might as well just tell them, like, to a certain degree. And I'm pretty sure you
yeah.
discuss it with management, being like, hey, things you should ask management before joining a company, what you are allowed and what you cannot do.
That's like the number one, because you don't want
Awesome.
Brits to do something where you can't. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
you can't do that.
Yep,
When
and also discuss it with a lawyer if it's something that you're very confused by. So, like a trusted lawyer if you can hire one. Other things that might be covered, like you were saying, like projects, they can't discuss on projects. They can mention that they're working on a project, but they cannot say specifically what they're working on. Like you can allude to it, but you cannot say like, "Oh, I'm working a collaboration with this company." But you can be like, "Oh yeah, I'm working on a project, so I might be busy." You can say that.
But I mean, like, I feel like it would be what I meant by that would be
Yeah.
like, let's say we're planning to like host an event.
Yeah.
Like, I can't say like, oh, don't rent out this area on this day, because like,
No, like the thing is that
you
like
know,
for that it's basically how project planning works. If it's something that's in the works, you discuss it with whoever you're collaborating with or whatever venues you're discussing with. When you're in the works, you never confirm anything. You just say, "Oh, I'm working on a project," but you don't say what it is specifically, right? Until the
yeah,
company says, "Yes, we're good to go." Because the main reason why they don't want is for multiple reasons. One of them is so they can actually plan it. They don't want you to promise something that is not there. And
yeah,
secondly, it's also like sometimes companies want to develop a marketing strategy. So if you're already mentioning it before the planning and you're making promises that cannot be kept and upheld, that's going to be a problem.
yeah, a very big problem.
Yes. You're also correct about the financial aspects of it. Typically, even like for like streamers, like you want to avoid mentioning finances because companies do not like telling people how much they pay people.
Yeah,
That's just the general rule of thumb. They do not like telling people. And of course, like, identity I think is the biggest one. And also like don't reveal company messages because that gets into the company politics. Say I manage you, Eli, and then you go to your friend and be like, look at what this bitch wrote. You know what I mean? And then I find out that, hey, I'm managing you, and then I find out that you're this happens, Eli. So like, this is why I'm bringing it up.
it was just so funny to me, just because like.
Like
I imagine that
you what?
like you just hired me for like I imagine we're all sitting in a room together. My friend walks in after like you hand me a script, and I look over with like a frustrated look on my face. I'm like, you see what the bitch just wrote? What the fuck? Like in front of your face, like bro.
Yeah, but like yeah, so like
Oh my
basically
god.
that like it happens though. This things happens like where you'd be like, did you see like what so and so wrote? Blah blah blah. A lot of it is like if you're putting the company at like jeopardizing the company and their name. NDAs are there for protection purposes. Is what everybody needs to understand before they join a company. You cannot just join
Yeah.
a company and be like, oh yay, I joined this company and blah 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 blah. There are reasons why companies write these NDAs, and it's to protect everybody who's involved with these projects. You are jeopardizing people's livelihoods sometimes if you are to reveal these kind of details, whether you're accidentally doxing them, whether you are revealing very sensitive messages, or you are revealing like company contracts, right? These are all things not just in the entertainment industry, but just in general. Like, all companies follow this. It's not a new concept. That's the thing I think a lot of people don't understand when it comes to NDAs and contracts, I believe, especially with the younger generation. And I'll bring up the reason why.
Go ahead.
It's because you know how I said that there's a good way and there's a bad way to leave a company?
Yeah.
Okay. So the way to tell if a VTuber and a company left on good terms is if they get a graduation. Do you know
That's
what
a thing.
do you know what a graduation is?
I know a high school graduation.
For graduations, it started from Japanese culture like idol culture, and it's because like typically back in the idol culture, when a girl graduates or when an idol graduates from their company or group, it's usually because like they're like probably, I wouldn't be surprised if it's from like the school themed idol groups, like the schoolgirl themed ones, and like if they graduate it's because like they're moving on to something new or something else, right? And so because the Japanese idol industry is very close to the VTuber industry, a lot of idol terms have been adopted, and graduate is one of them. So if a person says, "Hi, I'm graduating from my VTubing activities," typically they're leaving their identity as that character or streamer. Whether or not they continue to stream as a different identity as a different character or for a different company is kind of up in the air. But when you're graduating, you're usually doing it on good terms with the company.
Yeah.
Now, this is very different from being terminated.
Yeah, it's like it's basically like being terminated from a job and
Yes.
putting in 2 weeks.
When you get terminated from a company, it means that you left on bad terms. It's usually because, and this has been a trend lately, it's because usually it has something to do with NDA being broken, or there was something that could not be resolved between the two, and it was not good. The reason why I say that is because Hololive and Nijisanji had 2 terminations, and Hololive had a termination last year, and it was a very big deal because the talent was their biggest earner after the graduation of one of their members. I'm gonna throw this out there, guys, because there's some people, whenever somebody gets terminated, not all terminated corporate streamers jump from company to company. I'm just gonna throw that out there for people.
I'm pretty sure she was only able to because she was the top earner.
What I want people to remember is that the reason why I'm saying all these things and being a bit harsh to a certain degree is because there are so many people out there who apply to these companies not realizing what it may entail. And I don't say this information so people are too scared to apply. I say this information so you're more aware about what you're walking into. Because I would rather you be aware of the sacrifices you're going to have to make in order to join these companies, as opposed to going into and being naive about the situation, I believe.
It is better to at least have an idea of what you're getting into when you like apply to a company. It's not just like, it's all in it for me, like I was saying earlier. Like it's good to at least know. And like, as much as it sounded like we were like, yeah, these companies, like, they're gonna screw you over if you don't do this and this and this, like, that's not the goal. It's just to give you an idea that it's not all rainbows and daisies. Like, there is some things you might have to sacrifice or have to pay up to be a part of a company, but that's just the reality of it.
It's about being realistic at the end of the day, I think. And
yeah,
so many people don't understand that you do have to make sacrifices, and it's okay to make those sacrifices, but you just have to be willing to do it. And if you're not willing to do it, then don't join a VTuber company. Like, I'm sorry, it's just not for you, and it's okay. There's a reason why the biggest streamers out there want to stay indie. You look at people like Bao, for example. Like, Bao could easily join a VTuber company.
Yeah.
I'm 100% people have like approached her for like to hire her or bring her onto their company, and she probably has rejected a whole bunch of different like management and people. I think it's like, I want more people to do research on what it means to join a company. There's so many of these corporate VTubers literally making videos for you guys to do your own research about their companies. Like, they tell you as much as they can, like as much as their NDA allows them to. And I like to watch them, even if I don't plan on applying for that company. I like to watch them just because it's so interesting, just to like learn about corporate life and what's expected of you. Some of them do talk about it because it's like during the audition season, which I will also talk about probably auditions on a different day. But I just wanted to do kind of like a brief overall discussion on corporate and kind of get Eli more informed. Do you feel more informed?
I feel my brain expanding the entire time.
Do you think you're going to apply for another company?
I don't know. like not not as like the information didn't make me go ugh, but it's
Yeah.
like for the most part the main thing I would get out of joining a company is just the collaborations. But I feel that like a lot of the collaborations that I'll have and that I'll enjoy is not from a business telling me, hey, you should do a collab with this person.
There are pros and cons to both companies. I would have, if you were to ask me, I could literally probably spend like an entire like another podcast just talking about each specific companies based on like what I think are like the pros and cons of each one.
Hmm.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Internet. We hope that you enjoyed the show. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to shoot it down below. We live stream our bi-weekly show on every second and last Monday of each month, with our recordings being released a week and 2 days after on YouTube and SoundCloud. Check out our socials if you want to connect with us, and we'll see you next time on the Internet.